My niece called me a slur she learned from her dad, who thinks I'm not a real man for doing housework. I demanded an apology, they refused, so I stopped babysitting. Now my family is upset I'm not manning up over being called a F-word. Posted by you/fluffbuffer23. I, 29M, and my wife, 30F, have 2 kids, 5M and 3M. My wife works a full-time office job, while I work from home with extremely flexible hours. Basically, as long as I meet my deadlines, no one really cares how many hours it took or what time of day I work, outside of some Zoom meetings. My sister, 26F, let's call her Barb, and her husband, 30M, let's call him Nick, live nearby and work full-time jobs. They have a daughter, 5F, let's call her Tracy. Because of my comfortable work schedule, when our kids started going to daycare, we basically decided that I would drop off and pick up my niece from daycare alongside my own kids. I didn't really mind, and I thought it was great for my kids to spend time with their cousin. I get along with Tracy as well and always thought I was her cool uncle. She's a sweet kid and usually well behaved. So anyway, most days I bring her and my kids back to our house, make them snacks or dinner, and in the afternoon or evening, my sister comes to pick them up. A few days ago, the 5-year-olds were watching Bluey on the TV while I was preparing snacks with my 3-year-old, and I suddenly heard yelling. I rushed over to see what was happening, and my son was yelling at Tracy, "My dad's not a girl," while my niece yelled back, he's a F-word. That's like a girl. The word is different in my language, but the meaning holds, as does the distinction between using it versus simply addressing a gay person. I was kind of in shock at first, but I turned off the TV and sat her down to explain that this is a very bad word and we shouldn't call people that. I also explained that, regardless, I'm not a girl. Because this is a bad word, I told her she should apologize to me because we don't act mean to each other in this family, and that if I hear it again, I'm going to talk to her parents, and she'll get in trouble. She said she wouldn't get in trouble because that's what her dad called me, and he's not in trouble. I was stunned. I told her that regardless of what her dad said, it's a very bad word and she's not to use it with me or in my presence, and that she should apologize regardless because it hurt my feelings. She did apologize because she's a really good kid. We talked some more, and I prodded her about other things her parents said. From what I gathered, getting info out of a 5-year-old being obviously a difficult and unreliable process, Nick, my brother-in-law, told my sister in Tracy's presence that men shouldn't be sitting at home all day doing childcare, that cooking is a woman's duty, as is cleaning, and really most of the things I do around my house. He said I'm a girl. I interpret this as not really a man, because I do housework and my wife earns more money than I do. I explained to Tracy as best I could that men and women can work from an office or from home, and that my wife or Barb working long hours from the office doesn't make them men, and vice versa. I didn't dwell on it with her since it's not really her fault. I didn't immediately bring it up with my sister because I figured it would be a difficult conversation, and I didn't want to have it in front of the kids. I also wanted to talk it out with my wife first. I talked to my wife that evening, and she seemed really upset as well. I told her that I think I should demand an apology from Nick and my sister, and she agreed. I called my sister and told her what happened. She said that it's just a word and I'm blowing it out of proportion, and obviously Nick doesn't dislike me. I said I don't care whether he does or doesn't dislike me, he is talking crap about me behind my back to my niece and to her, and she is apparently very chill about this rather than standing up for me. She said that's how Nick is, and I should stop being a drama queen. I told her to screw off, and if that's how she felt, she could pick up her own child from daycare, and I hung up. I know it was really short notice and rude, but I really felt like I was being disrespected by people I've done so much for over the years, and they are my family. My wife said she understood and that I shouldn't back down until I at least get a proper apology. The next 2 days were a weekend, and there was no daycare. I assumed there would be calls or texts from Barb, but there was nothing. In fact, the suspicious lack of messages or calls made me think she didn't take my words seriously, which actually made me angrier. The calls did come when it was time to pick up Tracy for daycare, and I, obviously, didn't come. I dropped my own kids off and didn't even answer for a while. I know it was petty, but I had been stewing for 2 days and figured letting Barb stew for a few hours seemed really appropriate and felt really good. Around noon, when she called again, I did pick up. I was going to smugly tell her that I was ready for my apology and we could put it behind us, but I didn't get the chance. Instead, she went off on me about how I was irresponsible and flaked, and she was so late for work because of me. I told her, "I told you I wasn't going to pick her up. You had 2 days to make arrangements." She kept yelling at me, so I hung up again. She kept calling and sending texts about picking Tracy up from daycare, to which I said I would not, then stopped replying. When I came to pick my kids up, Tracy expected me to take her as well. I didn't, which was really rough on both of us. I know it's not her fault, she's 5, and she suddenly doesn't get to come over to our place to play and have snacks, but at the same time, I didn't want to just let this thing go. I felt like I deserved an apology, and still do, so I explained that her mom and I were fighting, but I would pick her up again when we worked it out. She obviously didn't take it well, because she's 5, but I apologized, took my kids, and left. A bit later, I got a call from my mom. Barb roped her into picking up Tracy, but my mom is disabled, so she was having a really hard time with Tracy. She asked me why I was being mean to Barb. I told her everything, expecting her to take my side, but instead, she also pulled a "you know how Nick is." I replied that the more I realize how Nick is, the less I like it, and if he thinks all this crap in general and about me specifically, I sure as hell am not going to be doing free labor for him. She said I was blowing this all out of proportion, and I told her I wasn't the one doing it, because all I asked for was an effing apology, and everyone else seemed to prefer all this drama over just giving it to me. She said I should just be the bigger man and not let it get to me. I told her I was done and to have fun with Tracy. That evening, I got a call from Nick himself, which I hesitated to answer, but I chose to on the off chance that I was actually about to get an apology. Nope. Apparently, my behavior is causing Barb great distress, and he wanted to know how I could do this to my own sister. I told him that since we're family, how could he talk crap about me to his kid, whom I take care of daily? He said he was only joking and it was all in good fun. I told him it was neither good nor fun for me, and I wanted my apology. He blew up on me, telling me I was a F word and couldn't take a joke, and called me a hysterical little girl. I told him to screw off, that I was done with him, and hung up. This led to a bunch of calls from Barb and my mom, which I didn't answer. Barb texted me that it wasn't fair for Tracy to pay the price for me being petty, and I told her it wasn't fair for Tracy to pay the price for her parents being ungrateful pieces of crap. She text yelled at me about how she was going to lose her job and I was being cruel to her and to mom. I told her I was done, and unless her next message was an apology, I would block her number. It wasn't, so I blocked her. For the past few days, my mom has been picking up Tracy, and it's been really rough seeing her in daycare and explaining that grandma's going to pick her up, which she hates. She tells me she isn't having fun with grandma and wants to come over to our place, and it's breaking my heart. But at the same time, I've never received a single apology from anyone but the 5-year-old, and I feel like letting this go would be telling my family that it's okay to ignore my boundaries. At the same time, I love my niece, and I don't want to traumatize her or have her resent me. She is a good kid, and none of this is her fault. What do I do? Edit. Holy crap, you guys. The post has barely been up for 4 hours, and I'm already so grateful for all your support and advice. The idea of Nick actually wanting Barb to quit her job is not something I had considered, but now I think it might actually have some merit, and it makes me very worried for her. At the same time, I can't really do much until she at least acknowledges that that's just how Nick is, so stop overreacting isn't going to fly with me. I also assume it's only a matter of time before my mom is no longer an option. She's already struggling, so I hope I get a chance to talk to Barb about it, ideally because she sees my point of view, but I'll settle for her being desperate. I don't know what sort of childcare they'll be able to afford. They took out a large mortgage on a house they can barely afford. I will also make sure to emphasize to Tracy that I love her and none of this is her fault. Thank you all. Update 1 day later. Alright, so I posted this yesterday and was genuinely overwhelmed by the comments, advice, and support. I'd like to thank everyone for it and feel this warrants an update. Just to clarify a few things. My dad died from a heart attack 2 years ago, which came as no surprise because he smoked a lot and lived a pretty unhealthy life. It wasn't his first heart attack either. He was a great grandpa and a great dad, right up to the end. But his death left my mom alone, and she doesn't work. My mom has multiple sclerosis, which is mostly steady but slowly gets worse over time and flares up occasionally. It's made worse by stress, which my mom is dealing with now. A flare-up often means she doesn't quite get back to the level she was at before, so we mostly try to keep her stress-free. My dad had life insurance, so her house is paid off, and she has a little money. However, there's also a caretaker who comes over 3 times a week to clean, cook, shop, etc., which she can't afford, so my wife and I pay for it. As I mentioned in a comment on the original post, my wife and I are probably doing better financially than Barb and Nick. They have a fancy house and fancy cars, but they also have a mortgage and loans. The great response I got made me think about all this again. I thought about how I could stand my ground without giving up on Tracy altogether and realized there was no perfect solution. I had to settle on something. I took the day off work because I just needed to process and deal with everything. One comment on the original post really got to me, about how someone in Tracy's place would feel, and I just can't do that to her now. I know this isn't the update some of you wanted, but I just can't. I love her like she's one of my own, and my kids do as well. It's not her fault. I unblocked my sister because, obviously, if I'm going to be interacting with her child, she needs to be able to reach me. I talked to my mom during the day, and she was, again, distraught about having to pick Tracy up, which is pretty hard on her. I told her I was willing to do it, but I was coming over and she'd have to hear me out. She agreed. I talked to her for a long time, avoiding snark and lashing out this time, and just explained that how serious Nick was, or how he is, doesn't matter. I used the rocking the boat analogy someone linked to in the comments and further stressed my point by saying that it shouldn't matter if I was justified or not in getting upset. I'm her child, and if something upset me, it at least warrants giving me the benefit of the doubt before siding against me. Eventually, it seemed to sink in. She apologized, and we hugged it out. I think she got it. She's not a very confrontational person and generally really tries to keep the peace, but this time she went about it the wrong way. I'm not saying I'm not mad, but she's my mom, and she apologized. I explained to her that she shouldn't be covering for me because that means I have no leg to stand on when confronting Nick and Barb. She was receptive to this. I texted my sister that we needed to talk, and I'd drop Tracy off at their place tonight, to which I got a stoic thumbs up. I picked Tracy up from daycare today, and she was overjoyed. She was actually a little possessive of me, staying by my side all afternoon instead of running off to play. It was cute but also made me feel bad because that's the impact of me not picking her up. I explained to her as best I could that she's not in trouble. I'm not angry with her, but I am angry with her parents and we need to work that out. I promised to do my best not to stop picking her up again, which made her really happy. I dropped her off in the evening, and once she was in bed, I sat down to talk with Barb and Nick. I told them flat out that mom wasn't going to be covering for them anymore, and if they didn't let me finish what I had to say, I'd get up and leave, and they could find new arrangements for Tracy. I didn't mean it, but they didn't need to know that. They weren't happy, but they were willing to listen, so that's progress, or at least the threat worked. I explained that this was the situation now. I don't need them to mean their apology, but I sure as hell was going to need one. This was about principle now. I've spent years taking care of their child, and if they wanted to be pricks, I wasn't going to do it for free. So this is how it goes now. 1. I am no longer going to be dropping her off in the mornings until further notice. There was no excuse for the way Nick acted, and it needs to have some lasting impact. 2. I'm no longer going to be paying for family outings and vacations. It's a man's job to support his family, so good luck with that. The exception is Tracy, she is always welcome. 3. If I hear any more BS being talked about me behind my back, I'm going to start charging them for my services. My plan was to dangle the thing they want, childcare. Restore it, but at the same time enforce some repercussions and the threat of things getting hard for them again. I also laid it on pretty thick about how I'm a man and obviously have my pride, and I can't have that disrespected, even by my own family. I don't really consider Nick family, but figured he wouldn't catch on. Nick was not happy about this, and my sister had to take him outside to talk it out without me. Eventually, they agreed to it, and I got my, admittedly half-hearted, apology. I could probably press it further, but I didn't want to risk having to either back down or hurt Tracy again, so I took it. There were no tears and no warm hugs, but I got to walk away with what I wanted, giving them some payback without giving up my time with Tracy. I still plan to talk to my sister alone about her relationship with Nick and how she sees me, but I figure I should let things calm down a bit before doing so. I know this isn't the resolution some, maybe most, of you wanted, but at the end of the day, I need to find a solution I can live with, and for me, this is it. I'll update if anything changes. Relevant comments. Commenter. You were paying for their family vacations? Damn. Ops response. I thought I was paying for our family vacations, but honestly, since my wife makes more than me and is primarily in charge of our finances, she could be considered the one paying. Her income essentially keeps us housed and fed, while my salary serves as the fun fund. She was always very excited about this because she doesn't have much family remaining. Having Barb, Nick, and Tracy, along with her sisters, made her feel like she had a big family. She felt this justified the expense and made her genuinely happy. Obviously, she is now furious with them. I don't think either of us will feel comfortable paying for them again, and they probably can't afford to come along. I do hope we will still get to bring Tracy, at least. Second update 3 months later. These past few months, things have been tense, but okay. I haven't gone back on my word about dropping her off and haven't been paying for meals or anything, really. Also, having realized what sort of man Nick is, I've been gently trying to get some alone time with my sister and ask her some questions about their relationship. Has he been isolating her? Is she financially dependent on him? Can she go out with her friends? How jealous does he get? Some of her answers made me a little uncomfortable, but I can't really force her into anything. I'm not trying to excuse the way she treated me, but I also think she's in a bad situation herself, and I don't want her to become more isolated than she already is. So, I'm gently trying to guide her down the right path, dropping hints like, "Isn't it like what your really bad ex used to do?" and the like. I don't think she quite realizes how deep into this she is, but I also know from past experience that forcing her into anything will mostly cause her to pull away and become more stubborn. So, I'm trying to guide her to the right conclusion gently while making sure she knows she has a place to go and someone to support her if she ever chooses to break things off. Nick hasn't really been anything with me. I don't think his feelings about me have changed much, but he's basically avoiding interacting with me and has to work a lot when we get together as a family, which I think might be the best outcome for everyone involved. Tracy has been sweet. She's slowly learning to read alongside my oldest and still enjoys bad words. We just use less mean bad words now. Hoop has been a hit. She's now a big fan of the Tom Carty song "Have You Checked Your Butthole?" We've been pretty good about making clear the difference between rude words and hurtful words. Over the holidays, we went on a trip. At first, Barb and Nick were probably shocked that I was serious when I said they were welcome to join us, but I wasn't paying for anyone but Tracy if they chose to send her along. I talked it over with Barb, leaving it up to her how to convey that to Nick, who, as stated, was avoiding me. I assume he didn't take it well, but I don't really have a way of knowing for sure. Barb, for her part, tried doubling down, trying to get me to cave, but I stood my ground. I said I wasn't paying for things, and I meant it. I explained, again, that this wasn't about a specific trip but about the fact that I used to believe they genuinely and unconditionally loved me, and that is just no longer the case. It's not something I can just unfeel. I need this to feel like I'm standing up for myself, and she can choose to respect my feelings and my decision or be angry, but I won't back down on this. The only choice that is up to her is whether to come on her own dime or not, and whether to send Tracy along with us if she chooses not to come. She ended up sending her along, and we had a blast. My wife seems much relieved to no longer have to put up with Nick as often. She apparently had him pegged from the get-go but wanted me to come to my own conclusions and was hoping he wasn't as bad as he initially seemed to her. She's glad I'm standing up for myself and that we still get to hang out with Tracy. I still hope someday Barb comes to her senses about her situation, and I will fully support her if she does, despite not quite being over what she either thought about me or at least didn't stand up for me to Nick about. But she's still my family. Regardless, thank you to everyone for your support and advice. Relevant comments. Commenter. Op is a better person than I am. I would not be giving them free daycare after all the crap talking and doubling down. Nick is a real piece of work. On one hand, he's challenging Op's manliness, on the other hand, he's accepting free daycare and vacations from a man he doesn't respect because he has overextended himself with a big house and fancy cars. Commenter 2. I don't know. I mean, Op loves this little girl and knows she is otherwise not well taken care of. He saw her every day that she wasn't with him because he still picked up his own kids and watched this little baby break down daily because of how much she loves and misses him. That's heartbreaking. I do think I would try to be there for my niece as much as possible, especially if I believed her parents were a bad influence and knew she was otherwise not well cared for. I completely understand anyone who chooses not to provide care for the girl anymore. But at the same time, I understand why he does it, for the little girl, not her jerk parents.